Greetings, this is Doc Ock coming to you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central this new day. Doing it in a even better way, if that's possible. If it's possible. And maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but we shall find out soon enough. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure that everybody is out there all the way tuned in, doing the right things this morning, or this afternoon, as we should say. Please make sure to go ahead and give us a like. If you're looking on Facebook, if you're seeing us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. We just had a auto glass repairman come out here just a little bit ago to work on replacing a car window. And one of the interesting things that he said as he was about to go is that he that when we respond to the survey to say how did he do, that if we gave him an 8 or lower, that's failing. So that we needed to really give him a 9 or a 10. And you know, it's just hard for us to give out 9s or 10s because, you know, we consider a 9 or a 10 to be perfect. And who is perfect except God Almighty? So so that made for, you know, that for us it's a little bit difficult. I mean, we really have to think about it, that we're going to give this person a 9 or a 10. Oops, sorry about that. Meant to do something else there. Oh, there we go. That's what I meant to hit. Okay, so when we're asking you for a like, it's like the same thing. Okay, not giving us a like is like saying that we failed. So we really need you to go ahead and give us those likes, give us those thumbs up to verify that we are doing a good job. Okay, that's all that does, and it's free. So there ain't no skin off your nose to go ahead and do that. So just go ahead and take the time and drop it on us. Meanwhile, let's carry on. We got our proverb of the day, and the proverb of the day is, I keep turning to this one, and this one, it wasn't all that appealing to me, but since it keeps popping up here in this book, I'm going to have to read it anyway. Okay, so I guess I'm saving the best till last. Maybe that's why, you know, I just didn't get it. It didn't really hit me. But maybe it'll hit you. A little leaven smooths away the whole lump. A little leaven smooths away the whole lump, excuse me. And by leaving, we're spelling that L-E-A-V-E-N. So not leaving like I'm leaving to go to the store, but leaven or leaven like what you use to yeast that you put in the bread to make your bread rise. So your bread's not all one big lump of wheat flour. Okay, give it a little, puts a little air into it, makes it light and fluffy. So a little leaven smooths away the whole lump, and that is a proverb from Côte d'Ivoire, otherwise known as the Ivory Coast. All right, so we're going to carry on with our book, reading from the book, the autobiography of Malcolm X, so we can get his story from him. Coming up this weekend, we're going to do a special in terms of the background, Malcolm X's background, going into his parents' lives and what they had to deal with. That because all of this, we talk about this post-traumatic slave syndrome. Well, all of what happened to them became part of what we now have, people have now defined as post-traumatic slave syndrome. In other words, the sins of the father or the trials of the father are passed on to the children. So we got some interesting background information to bring you that you may never have heard before. And you're going to see some images that are going to speak to that today. So let's go ahead and carry on. Where did we leave off yesterday or on Friday? Let's see, where did we leave off at? We left off right here. Um, I remember that during the service, talking about his dad's death, that during the service, um, let's see, where did it go? I remember that I thought that it looked as if my father's strong black face had been dusted with flour, and I wished they hadn't put on so much. Back in the big 4-room house, there were many visitors for another week or so. They were good friends of the family, such as the Lyons from Mason, 12 miles away, and the Walkers, McGuires, Liscos, the Greens. Oh, wait a minute. I think I read all that part already. Here we go. All right. No, I'm gonna read this part over again if I did because I don't remember all of this. Okay. Randolph's, the Turners, and others from Lansing, and a lot of people from other towns whom I had seen at the Garvey meetings. We children adjusted more easily than our mother did. We couldn't see as clearly as she did the trials that lay ahead. As the visitors tapered off, she became very concerned about collecting the 2 insurance policies that my father had always been proud he carried. He had always said that families should be protected in case of death. One policy apparently paid off without any problem. The smaller one, I don't know the amount of it. I would imagine it was not more than $1,000 and maybe half of that. But after that, money came and my mother had paid out a lot of it for the funeral and expenses. She began going into town and returning very upset. The company that had issued the bigger policy was balking at paying off. They were claiming that my father had committed suicide. Visitors came again, and there was bitter talk about white folks. How could my father bash himself in the head, then get down across the streetcar tracks to be run over? See, that's the whole problem. All right. Black folks always doing ourselves in like that and then trying to collect on the insurance. You know you wouldn't, right? So there we were. My mother was 34 years old now with no husband, no provider or protector to take care of her 8 children. But some kind of a family routine got going again. And for as long as the first insurance money lasted, we did all right. Wilfred, who was a pretty stable fellow, began to act older than his age. I think he had the sense to see, when the rest of us didn't, what was in the wind for us. He quietly quit school and went to town in search of work. He took any kind of job he could find, and he would come home dog tired in the evenings and give whatever he had made to my mother. Hilda, who always had been quiet too, attended to the babies. Filbert and I didn't contribute anything. We just fought all the time, each other at home, and then at school. We would team up and fight white kids. Sometimes the fights would be racial in nature, but they might be about anything. Reginald came under my wing since he had grown out of the toddling stage. He and I had become very close. I suppose I enjoyed the fact that he was the little one under me who looked up to me. My mother began to buy on credit. My father had always been very strongly against credit. Credit is the first step into debt and back into slavery, he had always said. And then she went to work herself. She would go into Lansing. Then she would go into Lansing and find different jobs in housework or sewing for white folks. They didn't realize usually that she was even a Negro. A lot of white people around there didn't want Negroes in their houses. She would do fine until in some way or other it got to people who she was, whose widow she was, and then she would be let go. I remember how she used to come home crying, but trying to hide it, because she had just lost a job that she needed so much. Once, when one of us, I cannot remember which, had to go for something to where she was working, and the people saw us and realized she was actually a Negro, she was fired on the spot. And she came home crying, this time not hiding it. When the state welfare people began coming to our house, we would come home from school sometimes and find them talking with our mother, asking 1,000 questions. They acted and looked at her and at us and around in our house in a way that had about it the feeling, at least for me, that we were not people. Eyesight, we were just things. That was all. My mother began to receive 2 checks, a welfare check and I believe a widow's pension. The checks helped, but they weren't enough. As many of us as there were, when they came about the first of the month, one always was already owed in full, if not more, to the man at the grocery store. And after that, the other one didn't last long. We began to go swiftly downhill. The physical downhill wasn't as quick as the psychological. My mother was, above everything else, a proud woman, and it took its toll on her that she was accepting charity, and her feelings were communicated to us. She would speak sharply to the man at the grocery store for padding the bill, telling him that she wasn't ignorant, and he didn't like that. She would talk back sharply to the state welfare people, telling them that she was a grown woman, able to raise her children, that it wasn't necessary for them to keep coming around so much, meddling in our lives, and they didn't like that. But the monthly welfare check was their pass. They acted as if they owned us, as if we were their private property. As much as my mother would have liked to, she couldn't keep them out. She would get particularly incensed when they began insisting upon drawing us older children aside, one at a time, out on the porch or somewhere, and asking us questions or telling us things against our mother and against each other. We couldn't understand why, if the state was willing to give us packages of meat, sacks of potatoes and fruit, and cans of all kinds of things, our mother obviously hated to accept. We really couldn't understand. What I later understood was that my mother was making a desperate effort to preserve her pride and ours. Pride was just about all we had to preserve, for by 1934, we really began to suffer. This was about the worst depression year, and no one we knew had enough to eat or live on. Some old family friends visited us now and then. At first they brought food. Though it was charity, my mom took it. Wilfred was working to help. My mother was working when she could find any kind of job. In Lansing, there was a bakery where, for a nickel, a couple of us children would buy a tall flour sack of day-old bread and cookies, and then walk the 2 miles back out into the country to our house. Our mother knew, I guess, dozens of ways to cook things with bread and out of bread. Stewed tomatoes with bread. Maybe that would be a meal. Something like French toast, if we had eggs. Bread pudding, sometimes with raisins in it. If we got hold of some hamburger, it came to the table more bread than meat. The cookies that were always in the sack with the bread, we just gobbled down straight. But there were times when there wasn't even a nickel, and we would be so hungry we were dizzy. My mother would boil a big pot of dandelion greens, and we would eat that. I remember that some small-minded neighbor put it out, and children would tease us that we ate fried grass. Sometimes, if we were lucky, we would have oatmeal or cornmeal mush 3 times a day, or mush in the morning and cornbread at night. Whatever. Filbert and I were growing up enough to quit fighting long enough just long enough. Oh, turn that page. To take the 22 caliber rifle that had been our father's and shoot some rabbits that some white neighbors up or down the road would buy. I know now that they just did it to help us because they, like everyone, shot their own rabbits. Sometimes I remember Filbert and I would take little Reginald along with us. He wasn't very strong, but he was always so proud to be along. We would trap muskrats out in the little creek in back of our house, and we would lie quiet until unsuspecting bullfrogs appeared, and we would spear them, cut off their legs, sell them for a nickel a pair to people who lived up and down the road. The whites seemed less restricted in their dietary taste. Then, about in late 1934, I guess, something began to happen. Some kind of psychological deterioration hit our family circle and began to eat away our pride. Perhaps it was the constant tangible evidence that we were destitute. We had known other families who had gone on relief. We had known, without anyone in our home ever expressing it, that we had felt prouder not to be at the depot where the free food was passed out. And now we were among them. At school, the on relief finger suddenly was pointed at us too, and sometimes it was said aloud. It seemed that everything to eat in our house was stamped not to be sold. All welfare food bore this stamp to keep the recipients from selling it. It's a wonder we didn't come to think of it of not to be sold as a brand. Sometimes instead of going home from school, I walked the 2 miles up the road into Lansing. I began drifting from store to store, hanging around outside where things like apples were displayed in boxes and barrels and baskets, and I would watch my chance and steal me a treat. You know what a treat was to me? Anything. Anything was a treat. Or I began to drop in about dinner time at the home of some family that we knew. I knew that they knew exactly why I was there, but they never embarrassed me by letting on. They would invite me to stay for supper, and I would stuff myself. Especially, I liked to drop in and visit at the Gohanna's home. They were nice older people and great churchgoers. I had watched them lead the jumping and shouting when my father preached. They had living with them. They were raising him, a nephew whom everyone called Big Boy, and he and I got along fine. Also living with the Gohannas was old Mrs. Adcock, who went with them to church. She was always trying to help anybody she could, visiting anyone she heard was sick, carrying them something. She was the one who years later would tell me something that I remembered a long time. Malcolm, there's one thing I like about you. You're no good, but you don't try to hide it. You're not a hypocrite. Oh boy. Ooh, man, that's a heavy memory right there. To remember that somebody let you know they knew you were no good, but at least you didn't try to hide it. You just put it right out front. And that's Malcolm X. Malcolm Little at this point, Malcolm Little. Okay, and the life of the Littles in their wake of their father's death. So we got some information on the weekend. You want to tune in because on Saturday we're going to do a special. We don't usually do those on Saturday, but I'm going to work that out. We're going to do a special on Saturday, and it's going to be all about the prologue to this part, what came before, what happened, what led to this situation that they're in now. Okay, because there were a number of things that led up to it that some of them are talked about in the book, but they're not gone into or focused on very, very much. He's coming from memory, and I've got some documentation that I'm gonna share with you on the weekend on Saturday. So make sure to be here for our Saturday a live stream at noon. In the meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and shut this live stream down. This is Doc Ock signing off. Please don't forget to do the needful, because I don't want to have to get pleadful over here. Go ahead and give us a like if you're looking on Facebook. If you're looking on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Last but not least, make sure to tell all your family and your friends about our live stream so they can tune in as well. And of course, we are looking for donations, and the kind of donations we're looking for are regular donations. We're looking for a recurring donation. That's really what we're looking for. And Brother Imhotep, I see you over there as well as Sister Esther, and I'm gonna give you a ring a little bit later, Brother Imhotep, and then we're gonna go ahead and carry on with our day. In the meanwhile, peace out without a doubt. Love y'all, and hope we have done something to help expand your mind. We ain't trying to blow minds, we're just trying to expand them a little bit. Peace out without a doubt, y'all. We're gonna go into our transition here in just un momentito, por favor. Mi amigos y amigas.